path is winding. Don't wanna lose my way, run out of time. On the open road, where freedom is in season, I may never get back home.
Non-stop rock talk with Tyson Bryden. Michael, welcome to Nonstop Rock Talk. It is so great to welcome you to the show tonight, man.
Thank you, sir. Glad to be here.
Thank you. As we begin, I must ask about your latest AP, so I possibly don't make a fool of myself. How the hell do you pronounce the title?
Syzygy.
Syzygy. Oh, jeez, I can't even get it. Jeez.
It's basically a syzygy is an alignment of three celestial bodies. So the sun, the moon, and the earth, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So, I sort of lifted it to, sort of pertain to the alignment of three songs.
Right. That makes sense. So, I mean, before we discuss the material on the EP, let's kind of talk about the production side of things. Give me a guideline of all that went into the EP.
Well, I mean, I wrote the songs, in my apartment, essentially, guitar and vocals. And then I gathered, my team, if you will. Yep. So Xander Lamothe on drums and Sean Gregory on bass and Joe DiTaranto on lead guitar. And, so, I wrote the songs and I worked with Rod Lamothe in his studio.
Yeah.
And so we recorded guitars, drums, and vocals in his studio. And then Sean recorded the bass in his studio. And we did Joe's lead guitar in Sean's studio. And then Sean mixed the project. And a guy named Andy Van Dett mastered the project. And that's kind of how it came together. It's it's a project. We're not a band, quote unquote. Although I think that it sounds like we're a band. You know what I mean? Like it does sound like, a cohesive thing. It's not, piecemeal. So I was really actually really happy. With the way it turned out. I've known Sean for 20 some years. I've known Joe for probably 15, 13, something like that.
Right.
And Xander, of course, I met through Rob, being Rob's son.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and for those that don't know who Rob is, it's Rob Lamothe, who is the lead singer of the River Dogs. I'm a huge fan of. I love the River Dogs.
Oh, me too, man. Yeah, me too.
And I actually went down to see Rob just over a year ago to see him play in. It was more or less. I don't even know if you'd call it a bar. It had a bar, but I can't remember the name of the town though. That's escaping me. Of where he lives.
Dunnville.
Yeah. So my wife and I stayed in this like bed and breakfast up the street and walked to the venue and had a great time and hung out with Rob after, and we had a really good time and the music was great. It was kind of one of those things where Rob put that all together and brought in local artists, and like he's such an integral part of the music scene in that area, which I think is
absolutely
amazing.
Yeah, I know.
Pardon me?
He and his wife are both, very active in the arts community.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so cool. It's kind of surreal too, like going to Dunnville. It's a small town, and you're in this like really cool place. And him and I were sitting at the bar and standing there, and we're talking about like the River Dogs and Vivian Campbell, and but he's totally not like that kind of guy. He's just such a cool, really cool guy. So.
Oh, absolutely. He's super down to earth. Yeah, exactly. He is. He's a really cool guy. I agree.
Yeah, he totally is. And he's just,
sure.
He's so involved in everything. And when you speak to him, like you really listen to him because he's really got a lot to say, and it's very, it's usually positive, and it's kind of person that I could listen to for hours, or listen to him
absolutely.
sing, right? So
yeah, for sure.
So let's talk about your background a little bit. I believe that you go all the way back to the Toronto scene back in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I wasn't necessarily on the Toronto scene. At that time of my life, I lived in Niagara. But I was obviously aware of the Toronto scene, and the Toronto scene came to the Niagara circuit.
Yeah.
So yeah, I played in. Where do I start? I started writing lyrics and melodies when I was 13.
Mm-hmm.
And then I, started to learn to play guitar when I was like 18. And I just, obviously, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a rock star, quote unquote, since I was 6 years old. So, I started playing with, some guys that I knew from high school. And we started playing, the local bars in Niagara and Thorold and Welland and St. Catharines and those kind of places. And, we did fairly well. I mean, the scene was really healthy at that time. The live scene was really healthy.
Right.
And, we had the opportunity to open for Varga and a band called Straight Jacket. I don't know if you remember that.
Actually, my buddy played bass with Straight Jacket, a good friend of mine.
There you go.
Yes,
right.
I'm familiar
with
them. Yeah.
And then there was also another band around that time called Basic Black,
mm-hmm.
which is also, fairly popular on the local scene. We played with them a bunch of times. Actually, our original lead guitarist left our band to join a band called Purple Jesus, which coincidentally, the singer now lives in Windsor. The singer of that band
mm-hmm.
now lives in Windsor, and I live in Windsor now. So
There's irony. Yeah.
It's interesting how it's a small world, right?
Right.
It's a big world, but it's a small world.
Yeah, and I guess back in that time, was Svengali, they were based in Hamilton, I believe?
I'm not sure where they were based. I believe that Dave Warmless, the singer, was from Niagara Falls.
Okay.
But again, it was like I never played with Svengali, but I was always sort of, they were around, I think Dave might have come to see us play a couple times. As well as like Toxic, like we did a battle of the bands type thing, and Nick Walsh was one of the judges, and this kind of thing, right? So so I was sort of like, I was sort of in that realm, I was rubbing elbows, so to speak.
That's right. Yeah, and I mean, it was such a, like, for me, I was a little bit younger, so I couldn't actually get into any clubs to go see any bands in the city.
Oh, me neither, dude.
Right. Yeah, so
I wasn't old enough to be there, but I was in the band, so they didn't question me.
Yeah,
right?
and I was kind of in the same boat. Was like here in Oshawa, where I live, I was in a band, and we could play. I could go to the bar and play, but I was only 17, right?
Right.
So it was like, okay, well, you can play, but you got to leave. But
right.
In terms of going to Toronto and seeing bands, I actually never set foot in Rock and Roll Heaven or the Gasworks or anything like that.
Which is, me neither, to be quite honest with you. Me neither.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, the only way I could find out any information about the bands was Meat Magazine, of course, because, I mean, that was making its way out.
Drew Masters.
Drew Masters, that's right. And he was kind of the guy keeping everybody informed of what was going on in the Toronto area and the hype, and you knew what bars were popular, not even just the ones downtown, but I mean outside of the city and whatnot, which was really cool. It was like a very interesting scene, and it seemed so up and coming, and then all of a sudden it was gone, right?
Yeah, no, and it is. It's strange. It really did do. It went that way. It was just like full on, and then nothing.
Yeah, I mean, the band I always think of from that time that was actually playing in the clubs with all those bands was I Mother Earth, but somehow they kind of slipped through the cracks because they were a little bit different, and they went with the next genre of bands, like kind of the,
Right.
like,
Yeah, they kind of fit a little more into the alternative scene.
that's right. Yeah. But I mean, at the time they were on the scene too. And it's kind of cool. It's kind of like, I remember watching the Power Hour back in the day, and they would play Soundgarden and Alice in Chains.
Right.
And they were up and coming, but somehow they did the same thing. They made that jump to becoming, because they were from Seattle, they were lumped in with that. But initially, you could watch them with all the hair bands. It's kind of a weird thing, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, especially Soundgarden, right? Because Chris Cornell, he had that screamy voice, right? So there was kind of a segue, if you will.
Yeah.
It wasn't, although quite different, in the way that the music was arranged and produced and whatnot. But there was a segue.
There was a segue. There totally was. And I mean, they were lucky enough to catch on to the next wave, where some bands,
yeah, for sure,
some bands just weren't so fortunate, right? So,
yeah.
So let's kind of talk about, like, you growing up. What influenced you to play guitar and sing and do what you do?
Oh man. Okay. Well, the first artist that made me want to sing was Elvis.
Cool.
Right. Yeah. When I was like, a kid, like a little kid, like 6, 7, sifting through my parents' vinyl collection, I was really drawn to Elvis, the Beatles, the Who, the Guess Who, Meatloaf, those sorts of bands,
Yeah.
Those sorts of artists. And then the first record I ever owned actually was Kiss Destroyer, which, I mean, I'm sure most people, of my generation could probably say the same thing.
Yeah.
But that was the first record that was ever bequeathed upon me, so to speak. But the first record I ever bought was AC/DC Let There Be Rock.
Cool.
And I bought it at a flea market in some, in a basement flea market type thing, for like $2.
Wow.
And because I'd heard of AC/DC and I liked the cover, you know what I mean? Like, so I was like, I gotta buy this record. And so I bought it, and I was, I was hooked, right? I've been a metalhead ever since, kind of thing, right?
That's
so
awesome. And
yeah,
and it is so funny that you mentioned, like, so 2 of the 3 people that you mentioned, Elvis Presley and the Kiss Destroyer album, my first music I ever got, I think I was 10 years old. I asked my parents for something to play a tape on and some tapes. So anyways, my grandparents bought me a tape player, like one of those little, really small tape players with like one little speaker in it. And
right.
They bought me Motley Crue, Too Fast for Love, and Elvis Presley, GI Blues. Those were the 2 tapes. And my mom and dad bought me Kiss Destroyer. So, like, right from the get-go, 10 years old, and I'm just like, I remember putting a pair of headphones in it. I think I got a Walkman as well. So I had a Walkman and putting the headphones on and listening to the beginning of the intro to Detroit Rock City, and like the guy working on the car and Rock and Roll All Night's going on in the background, and I was just like mesmerized. I was just like, what the hell is this, man? This is so cool. And I had never heard Kiss. I just knew from what my brother had told me. He's like,
right, yeah, no, similar situation with me. It was just like, I kind of heard of these guys, and I was like, whatever. So.
Yeah, and it was just, so anyway, so I totally can understand the Elvis thing too. I grew up listening to Elvis, and he was kind of probably the first artist I knew from my dad. Same thing.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Speaking of cassettes, I mean, the first 2 cassettes that were gifted to me were Foreigner 4 and The Police Synchronicity.
Well, great albums. Both great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure, right? So, I mean, if that's had some influence on me, I'm not sure, but, I had those cassettes as a young child,
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing how every little piece of music that someone actually just brought this up to me. I can't remember who it was, about how every little piece of music and whatever you do as a writer will influence you. And sometimes you don't even realize it.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And which I think is just a really cool thing. And sometimes you'll listen to somebody's work and you'll make a comparison that they didn't even hear. And then they'll go,
Right.
oh, you know what? That person influenced me, and I didn't even realize that I had done that.
It's interesting that you should bring that up because I heard "Let It Rock" by Def Leppard on the radio today.
Yeah.
And the guitar riff, it kind of reminded me of Left 4 Dead. Like I could hear that there was a similarity there.
That's cool.
And I was like, oh, maybe I was influenced by Def Leppard. You know what I mean? Like but I wouldn't have ever. If someone asked me, I would never say, "Oh, yeah, Def Leppard was an influence on me."
Yeah, it's so bizarre.
But they were, And actually, the very first concert show I ever had was Power Man. So, and I had never, seen Def Leppard live. I just bought it at a head shop or whatever.
Yeah. And that's funny that you say head shop because you don't hear that very often. I remember my buddy coming to me in like grade 7 and he's like, "Oh, you gotta go check out the Black Market in Toronto, man, or the head shop or whatever it was." And because there was this whole underground thing of heavy metal and, just cool stuff that you could find that maybe you couldn't find elsewhere.
Right, exactly. It was sort of counterculture at the time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and it was, back then, the things that went along with the music were like the flags that you put on your wall and, of course, posters and pins and back patches and 3/4 cut sleeves. It was just for kids growing up and seeing that, it was just like, it was natural and that's what we knew, but it was cool too at the same time.
Yeah, when I was in grade 7, I had a jean vest, a jean jacket with the sleeves cut off, and I had the Dirty Rotten Insoles patch on the back, like the whole back,
Yeah.
with like the mosh guy,
I remember that.
Yeah, for sure.
Dirty Rotten DRI.
Yeah, I was really into thrash when I was in like grade 7, 8. I was all about like SOD and MOD and Anthrax and DRI and all those real thrashy bands, that punk metal crossover.
Yeah, and skateboarding kind of was in with some of those bands as well. It was.
See, I was never a skateboarder. I was a BMXer.
Ah, okay.
Right, I rode BMX.
Oh, that's cool. I remember all that stuff. We were kind of. It wasn't until grade 9 I met this a friend who's still a friend today, and he was like, he loved Metallica already. And he was like, "You got to listen to this band." And my brother had told me about them, but I was just like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I can get into that yet. I think it might be a little bit too fast. But within a couple years, we were listening to Megadeth and Metallica, Anthrax, Testament, Exodus, like all that stuff, right?
Yeah, all those, the Big Four and beyond.
The Big Four and beyond, that's right. And it's so weird that metal had those categories, right? Like, you had your thrash bands and your pop metal bands, and then you had like your Dungeons and Dragon metal, which would, I hate to say it, as much as I love Ronnie James Dio, he was kind of in with that mystical Dungeons and Dragons metal, right? So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it was just a cool. I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. And I don't think we may never see something like that again.
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's hard to say.
Yeah, exactly.
But the metal world now is, it's pretty diverse as well. Hard rock and metal music it's fairly prevalent again, right? So, if you listen to, sort of like modern rock stations on radio or whatever, I don't listen to radio very often. I listen to radio at work, but generally speaking, I don't listen to the radio. In my car, I have my MP3 player, so I listen to my own music. But, if you listen to, like here in Windsor, the station is 89X, and, the sort of what's the new metal is almost like a boy band crossed with metal, It's very melodic, and a lot of it, it's not generated by an actual instrument, but then there's passages that are, and you know what I mean? It's different, but I like it, it's good. And then you've got your, like, sort of like your Dirty Honey, which is like total throwback, right? Or, and your Greta Van Fleets and, whatever, right? So, but I think it's healthier now than it was. You know what I mean? The '90s was a strange time. Like for me, I sort of turned my back on rock and roll, so to speak. You know, into the mid '90s and stuff. Like I just wasn't interested anymore. You know, I didn't really dig the whole like grunge kind of alternative thing. You know. So you know, in the '90s, I sort of started listening to like more like country and blues and folk, and you know what I mean, like more singer-songwriter type people. You know, like Bruce Cockburn put out some amazing records in the '90s. You know, you know, so I don't know. I sort of kind of went away from it a lot. I didn't really get the '90s in the '90s. I get it now, but I didn't get it when it was happening. You know?
Yeah, so. I was on the fence. I knew I didn't like Nirvana. I've
never been a fan of Nirvana.
I was just like that. I don't know. I'm not into out of tune guitar and just, you know, and pitchy singing, and it just wasn't my thing.
Right. Yeah. No. Exactly. Right. That's why I didn't get it. You know, like I didn't get it.
Yeah. And I mean that, and then the whole thing where you had to look like, you know, with your plaid and whatever, and it was kind of dirty, and it was like that was a total opposite of what we were listening to, you know, even 2 years prior or a year prior. So
right, yeah.
So I kind of gravitated.
Yeah, to me.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, go ahead. No, I was just say in the early '90s, you know, I was more into bands like, say, Mr. Big or Tora Tora or River Dogs. You know, there's sort of like those sort of Americana sort of blues rock. You know, Aerosmith Pump was a great record. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you know, and of course, you know, Guns N' Roses with Use Your Illusions. Those were great records. Yeah. You know, but it was sort of like that was it. That was Giant. But else, you know, had an amazing record. You know, in the early '90s, late '80s. You know, but yeah, things definitely changed. You know, I think Pantera was one of the bands that really carried the torch. You know, sort of like commercially, if you will, for metal in the '90s. You know,
totally. And it was weird how, and I have actually said this on my show before, how some of the thrash bands, the thrash became the mainstream where people were. And they changed as well a little bit. Not as much Pantera, but Megadeth changed and Metallica changed. It was almost
they rolled with the times, man.
They rolled with the times. And Anthrax, I mean, got the Joey Belladonna left, and they went with a different sound with John Bush, which was a phenomenal album, but I don't think people got it.
Sure. But I'm a Joey Belladonna guy.
And I love Joey Belladonna too. So, I mean, it was just, that was a weird transition. And I see why it didn't work either. It was a little bit over the top. It wasn't the same Anthrax sound we were used to, right?
No, yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, for a band like Metallica, for whatever reason, it worked.
Right.
They were able to change their sound, yet still, you know, maintain a fan base.
Yeah. I often wonder why. I think it was just because they became such a household name. They just kind of grew that audience, and I still.
Well, and kudos to them, man. I mean, they've maintained a career.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's like the Rolling Stones have done the same thing. I mean,
so true.
They've rolled with the times.
Yeah.
You know, Kiss has done the same thing. They roll with the times. I mean, fuck, they put out a disco record.
I mean,
you know,
like how many times has Kiss done that? Like,
yeah.
You know,
they reinvented themselves. I mean, that's a real. I think that's a skill, actually.
I agree.
To be able to successfully reinvent yourself to sort of stay current.
Yeah. It's
and hopefully you're you're maintaining your artistic integrity.
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah.
But they've been able to have careers that span 40, 50 years, and
it's unreal.
All the power to it, man.
It's unreal. And I mean, the thing with Kiss, the funny thing is there's different stages of Kiss. I mean, you've got the first 3 albums, then Alive comes out, and and then they do Destroyer, and Destroyer is like it's like really, really produced, and it's a fantastic album. And then they kind of go back to basics, and then they put out, they do the solo albums, and they put out Dynasty, and Dynasty is a totally different thing. And then their popularity wanes again, and they put out Creatures of the Night after 2 unsuccessful albums, and Creatures wasn't that successful, but it's a phenomenal album. And then,
Sure.
and then they take off the makeup, and then they go through the whole 80s thing, and their popularity wanes again, and then they put out another fantastic album in Revenge. So Kiss is this like a really interesting, if you look at that timeline of the albums and what they were doing. I just think, I mean, you mentioning that to me was really awesome.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's I mean, it's rock and roll, I guess.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know.
It is. It is, and it's funny. Like a band like Motley Crue just sustained right through it that whole time. But they kind of changed as well. Every album they would change their look. They changed the sound a little bit.
Yeah, they changed the logo.
Changed the logo. That's right.
The logo was different on every record.
That's right. It always has been, and I mean, I love that. I mean, I'm a huge Crue fan, so I mean,
yeah, for sure.
I mean, there was just something I think so many people gravitated to Motley Crue for so many different reasons, and that was kind of one of the reasons too, was that just that whole identity thing. It's like, we're not going to be the same all the time. And then the trendsetters, the other bands would follow and they change again. So, which was kind of cool as well.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the 3 songs a little bit. I'm going to start with, you did mention Left 4 Dead, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. Let's start with Silver Lined. It's very straight ahead hard rock tune, more or less, that also falls and features some clapping in it, which I think is cool. I think any song that has clapping in it is usually a good song.
Yeah. Okay, so that was something that occurred to me it was like in the moment.
Right.
You know what I mean? We were in the studio and we're recording and, whatever. And then I looked at Xander and I said, can you just play the chorus on the floor toms? You know what I mean? Like just, and I was like, okay, cool, and whatever. And so then after all that was done, and Rob and I were sort of like doing the editing and sort of like arranging the song a little bit. I said, what if we just cut out the guitars and I do a clapping thing?
Yeah.
Which actually, the inspiration for that was Matthew Goodband, and I can't. The name of the song is escaping me right now. But there's I can't even. Anyway, I know that I had heard that in a Matt Good song, right? Okay. So I'm like, I think this will work, and so we did, and we're like, oh yeah, that works. It's good. So, and the whole idea is, lyrically, it's a little bit heavy, but at the same time, it's like, on the open road, I mean, freedom is in season, right?
Yeah.
It's like sort of summer song kind of feel,
Yeah, it's a good tune. I like that tune. So actually,
thanks, man.
Oh, no problem. Actually, it's funny that you mentioned lyrically. I was going to ask you about that. What is the premise of that song?
Well, I guess it's about finding a silver lining, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I don't know what to tell you, Tyson. I mean, when you go through hard times, and things seem a little fucked up.
Yeah.
There's always a silver lining if you can find it, right?
Okay.
And so that song was about finding the silver lining of a fucked up time I was going through.
And I think that's amazing because there's so many of us. Everybody. I mean, pretty much everybody in their lives at some point is looking for a silver lining. So.
So that's in a nutshell the premise of that song lyrically is that we just I was going through some hard times personally and whatnot, and but I was also able to find the positives, right?
That's
because who doesn't like freedom?
Well, yeah, exactly. That's so true.
Right? So
so true. Now getting to Far Away. It's totally different from Silver Lined. And that's the one thing that I love about these 3 songs. They are totally different from each other. And I think that's fantastic. I think on that song, and I believe I said it in my review on Sleaze Rocks, it's kind of, the beginning has a Guns N' Roses type ballad type of feel, but I always found with Guns N' Roses ballads, they were superior to everybody else's ballads because they just had a way of writing those type of songs. So it's kind of got that ballady thing going at the beginning, but then all of a sudden it takes this turn and it goes harder and it's faster, but it still retains the integrity of the original idea, which I think is brilliant. Tell me a bit about that track.
Okay, well, I mean, that song, it only has 2 riffs.
Really?
So the intro is the riff arpeggiated,
Mm-hmm.
and then the verses are the same riff as the intro, but distortedly strummed.
Uh-huh.
And then the chorus is the other part, right? But it literally just goes between the 2 riffs. It's just the one riff, the next riff, the one riff, the next riff, the one riff, the next riff, and then and at the end it's the same riff, without piano. And I mean, the whole idea of that was like, so I mean, it's pretty obvious what that song is about, right? I mean, it's a breakup song. So in the beginning, it's meant to be sort of, it's kind of music box-ish, so everything was kind of like nice and wonderful, but a little bit not.
Yeah.
And then the body of the song kind of like drives the point home, and at the end, it kind of, I don't know. I mean, you have to hear the song. If you haven't heard the song, please listen to the song.
Exactly.
And perhaps you'll understand my description.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's a really cool tune. Thank you. When I was listening to it again today, prepping for our interview, and that part when it goes faster totally caught me off guard again because I hadn't listened to it for a while, and I was like, oh yeah, right, and it totally threw me for a loop. But as I mentioned, the integrity, it makes sense with, I mean, it's the same line, same part, just kind of.
Yeah, no, it is. It's literally 2 riffs.
Yeah.
It's
well done. That's very cool.
Which is a trick I learned from Bruce Cockburn.
That's very cool. Yeah, because a lot of writers would not necessarily do that. They would want to go somewhere else with it, where you that's very cool. So getting to Left for Dead, that one has a punkier type of vibe to it, kind of like almost a Headstones type of thing. They're rock, but they also have that kind of punky element. With the songs being so diverse, as I mentioned, from each other, was that subconsciously something that you did on purpose, that you really wanted to make them cohesive yet so different?
I would say yes. Only because, excuse me. I mean, lyrically, those songs were all written from sort of the same place. But I wanted to separate, the feel, if you will.
Right.
So Left for Dead was more, I mean, for me as a guitar player, I mean, I'm not a lead player. I can write some melodic bits, but I'm not like Joe. I mean, Joe is a powerhouse on guitar, right? I mean, guy fucking slays guitar. I don't. I write riffs,
right?
Yeah. So for me, Left for Dead was a little bit ambitious riff-wise because it's there's a lot of notes in that riff, especially in the verse riff. There's a lot of notes. So I kind of wanted to do that, sort of, I don't know, just to prove to myself that I could, I guess,
cool.
Yeah. And then lyrically, it was just, again, I mean, it was sort of at a time in my life where it was just like, I really wasn't sure if I was coming or going.
Right.
Yeah. Times have got so strange, never been afraid of change. I swear I barely know my name.
That's good.
And that's where I was at when I wrote it. So, and then as far as like the high, wow, the screaming, that's just something I wanted to do because I know I can.
That's because.
So, but I didn't want it to be like out front. You know what I mean? Like it was just sort of, it was meant to be an accent, So, and again, with Sean mixing, I think he really got that, You know what I mean? Like he understood,
That's cool.
because I didn't tell him that.
Oh,
You know,
really?
he just did it. You know, but he and I have known each other for 20 some years, so you know, he just kind of knew,
Right.
right? So
Oh, that's very cool. So moving forward, in terms of plans for the EP, you mentioned that you're not technically a band, so I'm assuming you're not going out when everybody can go out again and doing shows or anything.
well, I wouldn't rule that out. I mean, I'd love to.
Cool.
You know,
Mhm.
I mean, but as far as the recorded music, you know, I'm drawing on the connections that I have, essentially.
Right.
You know,
Mhm.
but I would love to, you know, get it to the point where, you know, I could assemble a band. I would, Joe, I'd love you to be in my band. You know,
Hear that, Joe?
yeah. You know, but I mean, as far as, I mean, Sean, I don't think Sean's joining bands. You know, he's got his thing. He's doing his, you know, he's producer. You know, he's a studio guy, and that's cool.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm working with a different drummer this time, a guy named Mark. I don't know if you remember a band called Modified
I do not.
from.
Oh, before I
No.
stop, actually, hold on. Before we go there, you're actually working on more material.
Oh yeah, sorry, I thought we were talking about that.
Well, we kind of alluded, we were talking about just playing shows, but we should specify that you are working on new material. So,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, I've got, I've got a lot of songs written, but I'm planning on doing another three song EP.
Cool.
However, during these uncertain times, I'm not sure if the schedule is going to be able to, like, I don't know. We'll have to see, right?
Yeah.
You know, because everything's on lockdown and all this stuff. So, you know, the plan originally was to get into the studio at the end of this month. Whether or not that will be feasible, I'm not sure. I'm crossing my fingers.
Mhm.
Everybody, you know, is in as far as, you know, the band
Yep.
is concerned.
Yep.
But it's a matter of whether or not we can get into the studio. So
Yeah. Well, that's cool.
hopefully it'll happen. If it doesn't, it'll happen at a later date. But yes, I'm planning another release for 2020.
Excellent. Well, that's good to hear. So before I let you go, I want to thank you for coming on the show tonight.
Well, thanks for having me, man.
Problem, man. Is there anything else you want to get out there or say to the listening public before we say goodbye?
Well, all I can say is, you know, look for me on Facebook. Look for me on Instagram. It's Michael David Wolf. It's not hard. You know,
Yeah.
I'm there. On YouTube, if you search Michael David Wolf, you will find me.
Perfect.
You know, other than that, yeah, I mean, please do. I forget more than I remember as far as songs I've written.
Yeah.
You know, I've been writing songs since I was 13 years old. That was, you know, a while ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guarantee you I forget more than I remember of what I've written. However, you know, I've if you're into, you know, the sort of hard rock metal sound of the late 80s, early 90s, then you know, will probably like what I'm up to.
That's awesome. And I agree. I will vouch for that because I have listened to it and I dug
Thanks,
it.
man.
And I look forward to the next one actually. And
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, hopefully we can pull it off at the end of the month. If we can't, then, you know, maybe it's, you know, into May or whatever, but it will happen.
okay,
Absolutely, it will happen.
excellent. Well, that is good.
So there will be new music from myself and my team this year.
Perfect. Okay. Well, everybody should be looking for that then, and hunt it down on YouTube and Facebook and whatever other avenue.
I concur.
Yes. All right, man. Well, thanks again, and you have yourself a great night, and we'll be talking soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks,
No
Tyson.
problem, brother. Talk to you soon, man.
All right,
Okay.
take care.
Times have got so strange. Never been afraid of change. Swear I barely know my name. Like a song that's stuck on repeat. Like so many silly shoes are on my feet. As if my heart's gone inside out. Left me standing in the middle of doubt. I've been crying to the heavens above, saying, why can't I get your love? I swear it's never been this tough. Feels like I'm going against the grain. Life will never be the same. I gotta play by different rules. But yes, Sean is born from the dream.